copy of the handout, and that's where we'll go today. A couple of fellows from another region of the state came by the research center the other day to talk to a colleague of mine, and they said, we want to know what's new in rootstocks, what's going on in rootstocks, because no one's planting Swingle and Carrizo anymore. Well, the data absolutely show that that is not right. So if you take a look at, first of all, well, the second page, I guess, is on your handout, which is a list of current data from the Bogle office, which tracks what's going on. And you'll see that just in the last year, it represents kind of what's going on in recent years. The number one rootstock still in the state of Florida is Swingles and Trumbull. 1,000,003 propagations as recorded by the Bogle office last year, nearly 45% of all nursery propagations last year. So Swingle is still a big player in the business. And why? Well, there's good reason for it. One of the stories that I've enjoyed telling through my career is you skip down to number 5, Cleo, and you say, well, Cleo is kind of a rootstock that some people swear by, and a rootstock that other people swear at for one reason or another. And so it's just floated along through our industry over the years, almost forever, ever since numbers have been recorded, at around 5 to 15% of the propagations in any given year. Why is that? Well, we can have a discussion for a while about why that is, but the fact is that it only attracts that much attention in the industry for one reason or another. It is not a primary rootstock for oranges and grapefruit, but it is used for those two collections of science for one reason or another, and it's primarily rootstock for a few mandarin types, and therein resides its use in our industry. So Swingle, 45% in this past year. And it's interesting now that number 2 and number 3 are distinguished from each other. It gets a little confusing. Perhaps you've encountered this yourself when you've been ordering nursery trees. And you call up the nursery and you say, I'd like to have some Hamlin trees on Carrizo. And maybe somebody in the nursery says, do you mean Hamlin trees on Kuharski Carrizo? It's confusing. If I had my way, I'd say it's going to be over. It's either Carrizo or Kuharski, one or the other. And they are distinguished, as you see there. They're the number 2 and the number 3 rootstock. Now, interesting story. Mr. Kuharski, after whom this is named, this guy that lives up in a little old piece of property out in the middle of cotton growing country in Florida, which I found to be interesting. He's an old World War II, North Africa pilot. And some work was done on his property a number of years ago, and from that nursery set of trees came this one that looked really good for burrowing nematodes, and it got named Kuharski. So for all practical purposes, it was a seedling, a rootstock, selected from within a population of Carrizo seedlings. So it got named Kuharski Carrizo, of course. But it's distinguished mostly by its superior, the best, burrowing nematode tolerance. And it's also catching on for one reason or another out there. But I don't know why, actually. Why is Kuharski attracting more attention than Carrizo is at this point in time? It's kind of like asking Californians, how come you don't grow trees on Schroyer Citron anymore? You're all switching to Carrizo and C35 Citron. I don't know. It's a trend. It started, it happens. But none of this is to say that Kuharski isn't a good rootstock. If you like Carrizo and Carrizo has done well, I suppose people are saying, well, we think that Kuharski is a bit better than Carrizo, so if we have a choice, we make that choice. We select trees on Kuharski over those on Carrizo. The difference is not that great, but nevertheless, it's interesting that the new rootstock has come along to the point of being 0.6% of last year's propagations. Okay, sour orange. Sour orange a few years ago was 0. Now it's 7%. Why is that? Is anyone in this area? Is anyone in the room planted sour in the last few years? Now, does that mean that you haven't done it or you don't want to admit to it? Okay. Well, that's because most of the sour orange is being used, I think, over in the East Coast area and the river area because of frustration of the failure of certain food stocks, particularly Swingle. One of the things we know about Swingles, for some work we did over in the East Coast area, where soils are a bit different than they are over here. You know, good soils, generally speaking, over here. I mean, I think that, but relatively speaking, I think that's true. Over there are some places where Swingle does not grow very well. Certain soils, particularly those with a clay layer in them, clay layer within 20, 30 inches of the surface is not where Swingle lasts for a very long period of time. Okay, but still, 45%. So, sour orange, is it crazy to plant sour orange? Well, one of the things that's true from this area, this side of the state, and if you go down to number 22, Counterpoint there, bittersweet. There was a time when I was new at Lake Alfred and started getting familiar with nurseries and the industry and what was going on in one place or another. People used to say, oh, Bittersweet Central is down in the west central area. And why are they growing bittersweet? Because it's different than sour orange. It does not get trustacea. Well, that's not right. We've done enough tests and talked to enough people with bittersweet to feel that there isn't really much difference to speak of between those two rootstocks. And so it doesn't make much sense in my view. Too much risk associated with planting sour orange or bittersweet these days, and there are other options that you can consider. So that would be something to take. Okay, number 6. Personally, at this point in time, I'd like to see number 6 be about number 4. X639. That question comes up all the time. It's a rootstock that we brought over from South Africa, so we had a good exchange there. We got a rootstock from South Africa, we began experimenting with it, and I had a lot of navel orange trials on X639 from the ridge down to the river area, and I never saw a rootstock with navel on it do as well, as consistently well. That's a big, big player in my book, is how does something do in terms of consistent performance. It might do okay here, it might do okay there, not so well, but does it do really well across a broad range of conditions? X639 has done that. Mike Prescott shared with me today that he just planted some, a while ago, some mid-sweets on 639, which are doing very well, yielding well. So, and there's a couple of guys over in the Sebring area, they got Blenches on 639 that are doing well. 639, by the way, is a hybrid between Cleopatra and Rubidoux trifoliate orange. So it has many of the characteristics of Cleo or a mandarin. It grows a pretty big tree, grows pretty vigorously. But to me, it's kind of like Kuharski and Carrizo, what I said a moment ago. If you had a choice, would you choose Kuharski? If you had a choice between Cleo and X639, hands down, in my opinion, I'd take the X639. I think the performance is reliably a bit better in many respects from a phytophthora standpoint and also for production. Juice quality is the same for all practical purposes as Cleo. Anybody planted any Kinkoji, number 7? Well, there's a few rootstocks that got offered up as something similar to sour. And they're probably Pomelo trifoliate, Pomelo sour orange type hybrids, all of them. You remember there was one called Gal Chow that was offered up as excellent tristacea tolerance. And Kinkoji is another one of these. And the third one that was in that group is number 15, Smooth Flat Seville. East Coast growers in attempt to find something to substitute for sour orange. I've tried a few of these with generally mixed results, let's say. The best I can say is mixed results. And probably among those, there is more interest in Kinkoja. Our group, Lake Alfred, does plant improvement, has recently gotten connected with a family operation over the Vero Beach area. They have grapefruit on Kinkoja over there, and they love it. And they are the one company, one of a couple companies over there that have brick sensors on the packing line, so they're segregating the grapefruit by bricks, and they're okay with Kinkoja. So interesting. I suppose, given all the chatter about new rootstocks, it's a little surprising in a way that number 11, all the way down there, 12 and 13 are the three most recently released USDA rootstocks. And 897 is a Clio trifoliate hybrid. Interesting, right? Same parentage. No, sorry, it's a Clio Pine Dragon trifoliate hybrid. Yeah. So it looks like it might be a rootstock similar to number 17, which gives us a medium-sized tree, C35, and rootstocks that are very suitable, in my opinion, for what maybe you've heard before, the modern orchard, a 10 by 20 or 218 trees to the acre grow, something about that orchard. You're going to replant and bolster your tree count per acre. Moving towards conventional growth, towards the modern growth, or the higher density growth is where you want to go. And C35 and probably 897 are really good choices for that type of planting. Okay. Steve took the rootstock wheel and converted it into a table, which is back there. If you haven't got one of those, the table or the wheel, pick one of those up. Take it. Think are the general characteristics of many of these rootstocks, but 802 is a vigorous rootstock. Pomelo trifoliate hybrid would be a good choice probably for replanting where you've got a moderately spaced road. And US 942 is the newest of the three. The least is known about that, but it looks promising based on what Dr. Bowman said about its characteristics.
What would you compare 802 quality-wise?
Anytime it's a pomelo trifoliate hybrid, Terry, so I say anytime pomelo is in the mix, that's going to be an issue in terms of juice quality. I can't tell you that I've seen any reliable numbers on that except what Tim has presented when he makes his presentations about it. So if this means anything, it's probably somewhere between somewhere up a cut or two above rough lemon, I would say. For oranges. A cut or two above rough lemon for quality for oranges. Yeah. I'm guessing.
And 812 a little better?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Right. Thank you. Number 9 is the US 812, which is an interesting rootstock too. That's got fairly good vigor to it, but and the reports on it so far are pretty decent. We're producing yield and decent quality fruit. So a number of these rootstocks have been around for a while. And I think that always raises the interesting question, well, how long does it take for a new rootstock to get into the business? It takes a while. So 8, 12, and the other 3 rootstocks from the USDA are in there. And we're learning about those. And I think what happens today depends on who, this is what I've learned in my career, depends on who you are. What kind of decisions you like to make. Do you have a conservative approach or are you willing to take a risk? In my opinion, you're crazy if you don't try some new rootstocks. I mean, how are we going to learn if you don't invest a little bit? We're not talking about, well, gosh, I'm going to clear 100 acres. And, gee, should I plant 100 acres of Hammonds or Blenches on 897? Well, no, maybe not. But if you plant 100 acres, you ought to make sure you got a bed in there on this rootstock and that rootstock so you can learn something from it. You know, I'm retired now, so I can say what I want. And I think if you don't invest in learning a little bit, you're crazy. You know, and what does that mean, invest? You don't have to go out and plant 10 acres or something like that. If the nurseryman's got your order ready and he's also got a few extra trees left over from another order of 10 trees on 897, buy them and plant them out there and put them in a corner at the end of a row or something like that so you can learn something about it, because you got to learn. Because time's going to go by. 5 years, 10 years going to go by. You can make that decision or not make that decision and learn something. All right. I'm done. On rootstocks. I thought you were going to escape it. So, before I move on to signs, a few remarks about sign varieties. Anyone want to talk about rootstocks for a moment? Got anything you'd like to add to the discussion? Observations or disagree with me? I told Steve it was all right when I was done for him to stand up and say he doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's what the truth is. So, he's your man. So.
I agree with Leo, there's quite the roads that's always got a saying. What would you consider that overall rootstock, track, road trees, problem in the scenes? Rather than that, we'll do that job. Being that you're retired, you can give us some opinion.
Yeah. I don't like boobs. In case you didn't hear, the question was, what would you plant in this area today? Well, I confess today, I'm not nearly as familiar with this area as perhaps I should be, but I understand that there are some really good groves in this area that have been grown on swingle and have been grown on two parsley. And I think if I was planting hamlets, for example, I would take a crack at either one of those rootstocks. And I think that in my view, from what I've seen so far, I think 897 is probably going to be a good choice, especially if you have a grove that's not going to be too widely spaced. Now, if you're replanting or you had to stick with a particular irrigation setting, it's going to be a conventional grove, 12 by 25 or something like that, then I think 812 or 802 are the choices right now. Yeah.
Like 897 better than C35.
No, I don't. I know a lot more about C35 than 897 at this point. I like C35. C35 did really well in several trials we had over in the East Coast and a few other coasts on the ridges. Those of you who have attended Arnold Schuman's Jude Grocer's Field Day looking at the Gapway Grove up in Auburndale, one of the two rootstocks in there, C35, is doing very well. Yeah, so I like that. But I'm saying that because I know more about it at this point in time. So how am I doing? Any other comments? All right, let's do this. Go back to the first page. Again, this is from the Budwood office. And by the way, I didn't invent or create any of this stuff. Everything that you got in your package today is online. So you can go to the DAX website, drill your way down to the Budwood office in Winter Haven and look up their annual report, and all of this information is in the annual report. And it's very interesting. So, 1,100,000 propagations last year of Valencia. Top clone was 114.19. Well, that's interesting information. There are reasons why, again, people select a particular clone of a particular variety. And we've been shifting, Peter McClure was quoted the other day as telling everybody we're on an extinction curve because we're losing more trees and we're growing trees in nurseries right now. And we're also shifting in the industry a little bit right now more towards Valencias away from hamlets. So it's quite interesting to be out in the field talking to growers in the industry, and they say, well, we're really excited about planting hamlets now. And like, who remembers being excited about planting hamlets except that you had to in order to have a balance? I mean, holy cow, what's happening in our industry? We're excited about talking about hamlets. Lots of hamlets going out, but still a lot of Valencias going out. And then midsweet, number just talked about oranges. I had a conversation with a member of the audience the other day about what's going on with Midsweet, thinking that maybe there's been a little collapse observed here and there, but we're still working on that. We're trying to sort out that issue. But then again, Midsweet's come along. Midsweet has replaced pineapple. Pineapple cracker used to be the third variety of our industry for juice oranges, and now Midsweet's come along. Why? I mean, why? Why we give up on pineapple and plant Midsweet? Well, Midsweet's demonstrated some advantages. Midsweet's been around for a while. So it's looking pretty good overall as an orange. It fills in Midsweet, mid-season, and it's pretty good orange. So anyway, you can look at the rest of the information. So maybe move on along. There's just a couple other things before finishing up here I want to point out to you. On page 24, on the lower right-hand corner of the handout, pages that I copied are numbered, number 24. Skip down about midway, and you'll see Bud B/0. Bud Blood Orange. Well, no one's going to go out and plant huge acres of a blood orange, but this is a very interesting orange that exhibits pretty consistent performance in Florida, with not the color that you'd be accustomed to seeing a blood orange develop in a Mediterranean type climate, but nevertheless it has pretty good color consistently and the flavor of a blood orange. So that's interesting. So as you look down the list, you can see there's a number of things in this table, in this chart. On the next page is a recent USDA release, Early Pride, number 4 down there. Well, that's a so-called low-seeded or seedless version of the Fall Glow that resulted from their efforts to produce seedless selection of the common variety. And next to it is Early Gold. Being retired, I'm entitled to tell you that Early Gold is not a Tropicana variety. I developed that and released it, got picked up by Tropicana, and it's propagated under their programs. So that's the origin of that, and that's interesting. And if you'll skip all the way back to the V's, page 30, yeah, page 31, the last page, I guess. Let me end by just pointing out that there are 2 varieties that, in addition to the Sugar Bell, which is the first variety that came out of the CRDC, 2 other ones that my colleague Jim Grosser developed and released, Valen Fresh and Valquarius. They're examples of one strategy that we're taking in the plant improvement program, and that is to keep trying to create selections that keep moving back from the Valencia program into the mid-season, and maybe luckily we'll spill over someday into the Hamlin season, and we'll have something really, really good in the Hamlin season that's far superior than we've had to do with Hamlin. So we're trying to move, trying to put the pressure in that direction, and Valen Fresh and Valquarius are 2 selections of that, along with Vernier. Vernier came out of our efforts as well, and that's where we're headed. So I think, Barbara, that ends what I've got to say formally. I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Blood,
Everybody's done.
the blood orange versus like the red navel, the Caracara.
Yeah.
What's the real differences in them?
Okay, the question was, what's the difference between a blood orange, this blood, for example, and a red navel, the Caracara? Well, you know, we group oranges into 4 groups. One is a common orange, like Hamlin's and Blenches, and navel oranges, acidless oranges, and blood oranges are a separate group. The blood orange pigment is different. It's anthocyanin, the same pigment in grapes and blueberries and that sort of thing. And the flavor is distinctly different. If you pop open and eat a Caracara, it tastes like a navel, right? I mean, it's got different color, but it tastes like a navel. If you've eaten a blood orange, even this blood, it has what many people describe as a raspberry note to it. So it's different. Otherwise, from the outside, it looks like a regular orange. But it's mid-season and maturity also. Yes, Walt?
In the grocery store, you see ugly orange that are grown in Jamaica. Has anybody tried growing those here in Florida? I got
Thank you.
one.
Any other questions?
Have you got one? There must be some reason.
All right, here we go. Go back to the notes there, back to the S's. Let's see where we can find the S's. One that I skipped over. Yeah, on page 29. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to the bottom, you see Shiradui. If you read it, it basically says it's an ugly fruit.
Okay.
It's available now. By the way, everything that's on this list, this handout, is available from the Bug Office. Now, you can't get thousands of buds probably a lot of these things, but if you want to get started with something, you can do that. Okay? Shiranui is a high quality, very high quality orange. And there's some interest in it. Well, the ugly from Jamaica, no, I don't know. It sometimes is in the store and sometimes it's not in the store, so yeah, the supply's inconsistent on that too. Yeah, so no one's pursued that out of where. I don't know that anybody knows what kind of fruit it is actually, except that it's ugly.
What is a salad tree?
What is it?
Salad tree.
Salad tree?
What is a salad tree? What is that?
I don't know, there's probably 50 things on the list, I don't have a clue what they are.
Is a salad tree where they put multiple varieties in a single tray, like a
Yeah, salad tree.
cocktail tray or whatever they call it, 4 or 5
A
varieties.
few nursemen put two or three different varieties on one tree. But it's a pretty interesting list. It's very surprising how much stuff there is out there.
So is the Valquarius to replace the midsweet?
Is Valquarius replacing midsweet? Not yet, and it may not. Valquarius is not distinguished yet as an early Valencia or a mid-season orange. Not quite sure where it's going to fit in and things like that. And Jude released it primarily as a fresh Valencia because it's seedless and it's high quality like a Valencia.
But it is earlier in the
Yes, it
season.
is early, right. Valen, Fresh, and Valquarius and Bernia are a pack that mature more or less around the same time. Yeah. However, one thing that might be important here is the origin of those two varieties is by this process called somaclones. So a whole bunch of cells were separated out into individual cells and regenerated into plants, and they constitute this thing called a somaclone. And you pick a few of those out. It has the advantage of being Valencia. So if you're trying to sell your Vernia right now to somebody at Valencia prices, some processors will do it, some won't. But Valquarius or Valen Fresh are Valencias. So nobody can argue as to whether or not they are a Valencia or not. So that may have a price consequence. Okay.
You said Bernie is original Valencia.
Vernia?
Bernie.
No, Vernia is not.
It's a herd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you.